hard when you're in the moment to see the other side, but the other side is definitely there. It's really scary to get there sometimes, and sometimes that's the scariest part, but you learn from it and you learn what to watch out for, and you learn also, whenever you're a leader, the things that you don't want to do.
Welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast, a podcast about women who work in sports. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake. After 15 years of working for 3 major league teams, including the Boston Red Sox, Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Chicago Cubs, I discovered the one thing I loved the most was helping women in sports shatter glass ceilings and take their seat at the table. I loved it so much that I made a business out of it. I have the honor of coaching high-performing women in the sports and entertainment industry and supporting them as they go after exactly what they want in their career. So if you are feeling tired of waiting on the sidelines, done being overlooked for promotions, and you're ready to pull ahead of the pack and take your career to the next level, girl, I'm here for it. I also created the Game of Her Own podcast to support you as well. We are here to share the stories of incredible women who work in sports and entertainment. These leaders and trailblazers will inspire you with their success and the lessons they've learned along the way to the top. Ladies, there is nothing like women empowering women. I am so honored you're here.
I hear the words toxic work environment a lot more these days. I believe it has a lot to do with slowing down during the pandemic and having time to reflect on your career, what you truly want to get out of it, and what you no longer want to tolerate. In the past 2.5 years, I've watched a lot of people say enough and found the courage to walk away from those toxic work environments. My next guest did just that. Cassandra Pisone went from working in a toxic environment to thriving in a job that she really enjoys. Cassandra is the Senior Director of U.S. Sponsorship Marketing for Visa. And y'all, you're going to love Cassandra's story. She's open, honest, and raw about her career journey and how she got to the incredible role that she's in now. We talk about red flags that are a sign that you work in a toxic work environment. We talk about when it's time to leave a toxic work environment and how to handle those scars. We also talk about things like working a high pressure event like the Super Bowl, why managing up and transparency has helped her career. All right, Game of Her Own listeners, I'm just going to stop talking. I cannot wait for you to hear this episode. Let's do this. Cassie, welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right. So before we dive into your career, which it's an impressive one, I'm so grateful that we got to meet at the She Believes Summit. I think I have interviewed or am set to interview almost everybody that I talked to because everyone was so fabulous and amazing. And women who work in sports, like it was just like a hall of fame there, felt like everybody got to meet.
It was. This morning, I listened to a lot of the other ones, like with Kelly, with Skylar, and I just listened to the one with Ashley today, and it was so great. I need to send her a DM to tell her how much I liked it and how impactful it was. But I feel like that was one of my first times being around so many women who had such a varied career in sports marketing, but it was so interesting how a lot of the themes were the same that people had dealt with. And it was interesting to hear either things that they had done differently or how they got to where they were. But I think there's times where you made you feel less alone, that other people have been through the things that you've been through or have had been. So I feel like, even if it wasn't geared to us, it felt like a really great networking event.
Yeah, I was going to say, so for those of you who don't know, She Believes, the summit was really geared towards young professionals, women who are in, or girls who are in high school, college, and trying to figure out, what they're going to do next, really the next generation. And so we had lots of panels and they had breakout rooms, and Deloitte was sponsoring it and a huge part of it. And so it was just I was like, I wish something like this existed 20 years ago when I was trying to figure out how to go about it. But there was such great energy those entire 2 days. I didn't want it to end. It was so much fun.
It was so much fun. And it was really interesting. The number of women from the summit who attended, who reached out afterwards to connect on LinkedIn and everything. That was so fun.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. All right. Well, take us back before we get into your career and talk about all the great things you were doing. Take us back in time and tell us when you first fell in love with sports.
I don't think that I realized that I fell in love with sports until much later than I actually did. I was always around it. I'm from Pittsburgh originally, and so it's a huge sports town. My grandfather and my dad were always watching sports, and so by proxy, I was always watching sports. I played sports in high school. I ran cross country and I swam and I played tennis, and I loved going to the soccer matches and things like that. So I don't think that it dawned on me until later on that I was a sports fan, because I never really thought of myself as the traditional, let me follow this team. It was more, I loved to be around sports in general and was super active and loved being outside. So looking at it as more of sports for sports versus sports as a fandom. By college, I went to a big sports school. I went to West Virginia University. And so I realized then that it was really fun going to games. And I also got into hockey at that point. And so the Pittsburgh Penguins were doing pretty well back then. It was the late aughts, I guess you'd say. And so, watching hockey all the time and connecting with people like that. So it was really fun.
When did you think you wanted to work in sports? Did you always know, or what was it? Give us your career background before we get into what you do now.
So I have 2 degrees. I have a degree in marketing and I have a degree in fashion design and merchandising. When I was in college, sports were never on my radar as a career path. When I graduated, I was first working for American Eagle, which is in Pittsburgh, and they had a sponsorship at the time with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And so I would help out with them on their student nights. And I thought, wow, it'd be really cool to work for an organization like the Penguins. But as you know better than me, I felt it was really hard to break into professional sports unless you actually had sports marketing background, which I didn't have. So I never really thought about working in sports until I was at Visa, because they have all of these huge sports sponsorships. And one of the first things I ever worked on coming to Visa was the Super Bowl in 2017 in Houston. Mm-hmm. And I realized that I really enjoyed working on the Super Bowl. I really enjoyed the fact that a lot of what we do is around the fandom of the sport and passion around the sport. And I quickly realized that sponsorship and the actual sponsorship marketing for all of our great sports sponsorships is something that I was interested in. I was going through old notebooks recently of places that I was thinking about applying probably before Visa. And I had the IOC and things like that in there. So I think in the back of my head, it was something that I had thought about, but it wasn't something that I was trying to actively pursue because I didn't think that I had the right background for it.
So you didn't think you had the right background for it. You had a degree in fashion, a degree in marketing. And why don't you tell everybody what you do now and who you do it for?
I am the Senior Director for U.S. Sponsorship Marketing for Visa. And so my team looks after the activations in the U.S. for all of our sponsorships. So my team works on Super Bowl, we work on NFL Draft, we work on U.S. Soccer, U.S. Ski and Snowboard. We have a whole roster of athletes that are signed by Visa and sponsored by Visa that are in the Olympics or that play on the U.S. Women's National Team. So our team looks after how are we using our contractual assets for that, as well as any sort of media or experiential things that we would do with that sponsorship IP.
So you got to Visa. Were you thinking when you applied for that job, I don't have the right background for this? How did you make that transition from thinking you didn't have what it, not what it takes, but didn't have the right educational background or experience to work in sports than to, you have a really big job. It's a big brand working on some amazing, big stages for sports. Talk us through that.
When I started at Visa, I was the social media manager. And so I was touching our sports sponsorships by way of what we were doing for it on social. So going to Super Bowl, for example, and capturing content on the ground of what we were doing and posting about it on Instagram and working on those media plans and media campaigns around our sports sponsorships. When I came to Visa, it wasn't to work in sponsorship marketing. I will say that whenever I was talking to the recruiter they reached out to me about the role for a giant payments brand. And I asked what the brand was, and they said Visa, and also then started listing all of these as sponsorships. And that's what really piqued my interest was I thought, okay, I never thought about working in payments before, but I'm very interested in working in these sponsorships, or at least being able to touch that IP or those campaigns or events or things like that. So it was a little indirect, I would say, my journey to sports marketing. And then I realized I was super passionate about the sponsorship space. And in order to get promoted in line at Visa, you have to take on more responsibilities. And I realized I was close to the woman who was in my role before, and she was a team of one at the time. And I felt I could add value to her by helping with the sponsorship piece as it pertained to social media. And so I took that on. And whenever she left, I was able to step into her old role.
Wow. I like that. So you had to take on more responsibility at Visa. Like that's how you move up. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, exactly. It's not just doing a great job in your role in order to get promoted. It's also taking on more responsibility in order to get promoted, at least if you want to get promoted in your current role, because you have to expand upon your remit.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can understand that. And it sounds like you picked the right person to go help. Party of one who's obviously going to need additional support.
Yes. And she and I met in a very happenstance way. I had just started at Visa and we were in Houston for the Super Bowl, and I was going back to where we had our little base camp area, and she was at the NFL shop. I had no idea who she was, and we shared an Uber together. She asked me if she could hop into my Uber, and I said, of course. And we just started talking, and someone had said to me, she's a good person to get to know. And because I was interested in sponsorships, I always was really vocal about that with my manager and with her. And, if there's anything that I can help out with, I would be really interested in getting the experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good way to go about it. Were you at all nervous about taking on more and taking on something that was out of your, I don't know if it's out of your comfort zone, but that was a stretch for you?
Yes, I would say definitely, because at least for my promotion before this role, I was sort of charting my own path and charting my own course. And so it was really up to me to say, yes, I brought additional value by taking on these things that I just had the idea that I could take on. And then I think too, stepping into this role, it was a little bit of, oh my gosh, I don't know what I don't know. And I feel like there's a ton of stuff that I don't know about what to do this job. The interesting thing that I feel like I've talked to people about is that a lot of the role is project management. You have a lot of little steps in order to make the event happen. And a lot of it is project management and just understanding the process. And once you have that down, it's a little bit more comfortable.
Right. Yeah. So you worked that muscle, if you will, right? Like,
yes,
you developed it.
It's developing it. And I think it's also too being transparent with, if you don't have any context to something, telling someone that, because you're obviously going to them either for their input or for their help. And if you can give them the context on why are you asking, or, why am I asking for this? Can you tell me what to do next? Or can you tell me who else I need to talk to? Or is there anything else you don't need to know? So I feel like I just tried to be as transparent as possible, that it was my first time doing some of this stuff. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't forgetting anything, or if there wasn't anything that they assumed I knew that I didn't know.
A lot of people don't want to share that they don't know something. It's a lot. People have a lot of fear about doing that. We're like, what went through your mind? Like, give us a sneak peek and give everyone some advice on dealing with that sort of mindset issue.
I think it's okay to not know something. I think something that a lot of young people, or people, whenever you're earlier in your career, instead of saying, I don't know in a meeting, or making an answer up, or saying something you're not sure about, I think having the muscle and saying, that's a great question. I don't know the answer, but let me find out and get back to you. And I think because I had that muscle very worked out, I was comfortable saying, I don't know this. If there's anything that I don't know, can you tell me? Or is there something else that I'm not thinking about? Because it's better to ask for help than do something wrong and have to ask for forgiveness.
Yeah. Just because you didn't ask for help. Right. Exactly. Yeah. I do remember one of my first bosses, we were always told to say, I don't know, but I will find out. Right.
Yeah.
Just really simple. Like, I don't know, but I'll find out. But like, what easy magic words to say. And someone's like, oh, okay, I love your honesty. And since you were honest, I think I trust you now. And I trust you that you're going to go figure it out. Super simple.
Right. And I think that people like to be positively reinforced by the good question. And it's something that maybe you hadn't thought of. And whenever people tell me good question, whenever I have a question about something and I'll find it out, it feels good to me. Like maybe I thought of something new, even if they didn't. So I feel like that good question or I don't know. You're right. It's building that trust and it's building that also accountability that you'll go back and you'll get to the person with the answer.
Talk a little bit. I think the Game of Her Own listeners would be mad if I didn't ask about Super Bowl and like the bigger events, sporting events that you're working on and the pressure. It's high pressure. No matter what, the Super Bowl is happening, whether you do your job right, correct, or not, like it is going to happen. So just talk about that high pressure situation and how you handled it or how you'd give advice to others who are working their first Super Bowl or any other big event.
I would say that you have to have faith in everyone that you're working with to also do their jobs. And essentially, like we were just talking about, trusting them to do their jobs and to make the right decision. Last year was my first Super Bowl in this role, and it was during the pandemic. So we didn't do anything on the ground. So this year, even though it was technically my second Super Bowl doing this role, it was all new to me, because I was the one who was responsible for it and I was on the hook for it and making sure it looked great. One thing I think that helping with pressure is making sure that you're keeping leadership and other stakeholders super involved in the process, because then there's not going to be any surprises. I think if there are red flags, managing up and communicating those red flags, even if you don't have the answer, saying, I'm working on this. Hopefully I don't have to come back to you for help and I'm coming back to you with a solution, but just so you're aware in case it needs escalated. And then third, your team will feed off your energy is something that one of my past managers told me, because I had a new grad in 2020 at Super Bowl and I was super stressed because I had been sort of put in a position where no one was taking leadership over a piece of the project. And so I felt like I had to step in to make sure it went well. And it obviously paid off because I'm now in the role that I'm in, I think probably from stepping up at that moment. But he told me, so-and-so is feeding off of your energy. She's stressed because you're stressed. And so this year I went in with the mindset that if I'm stressed, my team's going to be stressed. I just need to go in and feel calm and secure and trust that everyone's going to do their job.
What a great piece of feedback to receive, and in such a constructive way, right? Like, it's not like you're so stressed, you're stressing everybody out. Like, it was more, if you're stressed, your team's going to be stressed. Like, I don't know if it was delivered that easily, but like I received it as, oh yeah, you're right. I got to fix that.
You're right. I think it was delivered that way. Like, if you're stressed, your team's going to be stressed. And he was at Super Bowl this year and he said, you're so calm. What's going on? Like, why are you so calm? And I told him, I was like, I've had that in the back of my mind, what you told me about your team feeding off your energy. So I have to trust that everyone is going to do their job. I can give a little bit of oversight and point out things to keep in mind or to be done differently. But other than that, I have to trust them because that's the only way that they're going to, in turn, trust me and grow.
Yeah, that's great advice to receive.
Hey, Jahaan here. I hope you're enjoying the interview. I am sure you are thinking about your own career right now and how you can pull out in front of the pack to take your career to the next level. For 18 years, supporting women in sports has been my favorite part of my career, and I would love to support you. Whether it's joining my free Game of Her Own community or one of my one-on-one coaching programs, I am here for you. Send me a message at jblake@jahaanblake.com or DM me on Instagram at jahaanblake, and let's schedule a time to have a free session. I cannot wait to hear from you. All right, let's get back to why you're here.
Now, so your time at Visa, it sounds like it's going really well. You've been promoted 3 times. Is that right? Twice. Okay. So yeah. So congratulations. Like, things are going well there. I know though, like way before Visa, you've worked in, let's just say it, you've worked in toxic work environments, less than ideal. And I feel like a lot more people are leaving jobs quickly because they're in a toxic work environment. Not everyone has that luxury of being able to either find a job quickly or perhaps they got to pay the bills. So they can't just quit and not have a job. But talk us through, I'd love to hear your advice on, I guess, what it's like to be in a toxic work environment. Like, what are some red flags? Because I think, why don't you start with them before I rattle off a bunch of questions? But I think, what are those red flags that come from being in a toxic work environment? And I say that because sometimes you think it's you or you're overreacting, and the people who you're working with can make you feel like, can gaslight you and make you feel like, oh, it's your problem. It's not a us problem.
I feel like you just explained it perfectly. That is definitely how I felt. I was crying on my way to work every day, which was a big red flag to me because I just didn't want to be there because it made me feel bad about myself. It made me question everything about myself. I feel like I'm a fairly smart person, and going there every day, everyone around me made me feel like I was dumb because they questioned everything I did and they didn't have any trust in me. And they also didn't have the communication to help me learn. It was basically, it was crazy feedback. Like, you had to revise this deck 6 times, so I'm putting you on an improvement plan, which was not the way to go about things. You could tell me why you were giving me feedback on the deck and what I could do differently versus giving crazy feedback like that. Like, I'll take a step back. I think not having clear direction is a sign of a toxic workplace because if you don't have clear direction, you can't do your job. Something that I think is tough, especially for new leaders, and I'm speaking from experience, is making roles and responsibilities clear, because you're afraid of hurting someone's feelings if they're not working on something. But I've found that roles and responsibilities help diffuse conflicts and help diffuse like feeling like maybe you're not valued because here's what I'm working on, here's how it's impacting the larger project or how it's impacting the company, and you can solely focus on that. Your leadership doesn't necessarily need to be a subject matter expert in which you are, but if they don't have any idea at all and they're from some completely different function, I think that's also sort of a red flag, because why would you bring in someone who doesn't have experience in what you're working on, at least in some capacity, that can lead you? And so I'd say that was a red flag, is someone was brought in from nothing to do with social media at all to be my leader, and then someone else to be her leader. And that was such a red flag to me because I was spending all of my time justifying my decisions, because if they felt insecure about what they were doing, you're going to question things a lot versus trusting someone's decision and trusting someone's opinion. So I guess to answer the question, someone who's questioning everything and not in a good way, but is making you justify your line of thinking, is a bit of a red flag. I'd say a lot of like reorgs and leadership changes is a red flag because there's no consistency and it's a bit chaotic. And I think too, if you feel like you don't have a safe person at work that you can talk to and tell how you feel, and if you don't have that sort of like psychological safety, is another red flag. Because if you're having a bad day, I think it's okay to be able to tell your leader, your manager that, because then they can help with whatever is wrong. So yeah, I would say that those are probably my 3 big red flags of a toxic work environment. And then if people are being mean to you and no one is doing anything about it, I would say that's a very obvious one. But you don't deserve to go to work and have people be abusive and mean to you and rude to you. Like, you're there, you're all working towards a common goal. Everyone's human. You should just be nice.
Yeah. And those are fantastic answers. And it breaks my heart that you had to go through those, but now like it's almost, it definitely made you stronger, I'd imagine, right? Like just going through all that, surviving it, and still having a successful career. I imagine though, when you were in it, you couldn't, or you tell me, when you were in it, could you not see your way out?
I couldn't see my way out, no. And I applied for so many other jobs and nothing was working out. And this is like way too TMI, but if it helps someone else, then great. My therapist at the time was literally like, I'm not supposed to tell you this legally, but you need to quit your job because you are so miserable. And my dad finally said, my dad, who I would have never thought in a million years would have told me to quit. told me, you need to quit, you need to get out of that situation. And that's what did it for me, because I was a little scared to do it on my own, because I didn't necessarily, I live in San Francisco. It's very expensive. I was single at the time. I was the one responsible for my rent. I didn't know how long it would take to find another job or what to do next. And it's like a really big sort of decision for a 26-year-old. You know, you had to make a lot of decisions, and I had to sit down and write out my budget and figure out, what could I afford to do? How long could I not afford to work? How can I find freelance jobs in the meantime, which you know better than me from working for yourself. It's a lot harder than people think it is, because you have to put yourself out there. And sometimes people don't know what they want or what they need. Yeah, it was definitely a tough decision, but it was the right one, because I didn't want to jump into another toxic workplace. So I wanted to give myself the space to be able to think about my next move with intention.
Okay, that's great. So you want to think about your next move with intention. How do you go through a job interview and figure out, like, is this a place that is a toxic work environment? Like, sometimes it's hard to know until you're in it. Are there questions that you asked during the interview process? Like, how did you figure out that you were going to a place where you were going to have that psychological safety?
Asking, why do you like working here, I think is a really good indicator into the company culture, because at Visa, whenever I'm interviewing someone and people ask me that question, I always talk about the people, and that it's a place that I enjoy everyone I work with. Everyone I work with is really nice and kind, and that it makes me want to go to work every day, because I actually enjoy seeing these people and enjoy working with these people. And there's a mutual trust there. So I think asking people why they like working for a company, and if they say something about the culture and the people, that's usually a really good indicator. I think hearing about work-life balance is also really important, because you know, if leadership values their employees' happiness as well, is really important. Yeah.
So it's asking the right questions, but then also listening for what people don't say, if you will. Right.
Yeah. And I think it's too, like, reading people's energy. I know that's such a, maybe like a woo-woo thing to say, but if you get along with someone in an interview, and you get along with all of the people that you talk to in an interview, you're probably going to get along at the company, because you're going to, their guard isn't going to be up in an interview, and interviewee's guard isn't going to be up, but your guard's going to be a little bit up. And if they are, you know, friendly and nice and welcoming, I think that says a lot about the culture. But when I interviewed at Visa, I really liked everyone that I talked to, and I left really wanting the job, because I thought I'd really like working with these people every day.
Yeah. And so now you're happy in a place where you've been promoted twice, doing some incredible work, and you survived working in a toxic work environment. Like, you survived it.
I survived. I would say that there were definitely some scars. I remember my old manager actually asked me once, like, what happened to you in your last job that made you this way? Because I was very skittish about something, and I forget exactly what it was. But it was, I feel like, you know, your brain sort of like erases things that are tough. But he could tell that I obviously had something that had happened in the past that was affecting me now, and was affecting the way that I reacted to a situation. I really wish I could remember exactly what it was, but I do remember sitting there with him and him saying, what happened to you in your last job that's made you so skittish? And it's really stuck with me.
So your manager was able to see that and not have a knee-jerk reaction of, like, a negative reaction, was able to say, like, basically in so many words, are you okay? Like, what's going on? And it sounds like to me, you were transparent with him as well.
Right. Yes. Because I want it was before I was a manager, but I always want my team to be transparent with me. And it was a place where I felt psychologically safe, and I felt like I could tell him what was on my mind, because you can't fix something if you don't know if it's broken. Not that necessarily I was broken, but if you don't know that your team is having a problem with something, you can't fix it. And I feel like your job as a leader is really to problem solve and to fix things for people and make it easier to work. versus questioning everything they're doing and like not trusting them and micromanaging them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's so nice that you have that or had that, at that moment too, to kind of help you get over some of those, battle wounds or battle scars that you had from, again, surviving a toxic work environment. Like, it's just kind of crazy to think about. I've been fortunate enough that I have not gone through exactly what you've gone through, and I'm so grateful for you for sharing some of this. I think a lot of people will get a lot of, I want to say, use out of it, but also just some comfort too, that they're not alone. Like, I've had women who have called me who have been crying just because, like, I can't work here anymore, but I have to, like, and it's just so easy to get sucked in that place. And just some people just don't, they just leave work altogether, like leave the workforce or leave the industry, you know what I mean? Like, and leave what they think that they always wanted to do because of one bad experience. And it's not like that everywhere.
That's really great advice. You're right. It's not like that everywhere. And it's hard when you're in the moment, like you said, to see the other side. But the other side is definitely there. It's really scary to get there sometimes. And sometimes that's the scariest part. But you learn from it and you learn what to watch out for. And you learn also, whenever you're a leader, the things that you don't want to do. And you learn sort of how to be a good leader by not doing the things that you went through. So I will say that is maybe a positive out of the situation that I took away.
I like that. The positives of working in a toxic or the lessons learned that turned into positive. Yeah. That's fantastic. Okay. So I feel like there's no good segue from talking about a toxic work environment to rapid fire questions. So that's why I say it like that. So let's go to rapid fire questions.
Great.
Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. 12 questions. First thing that comes to your mind. First one. What is your favorite sports moment?
The Penguins winning the Stanley Cup in 2017, the penultimate game, because I went with my dad. He said, you never know when they're going to be in a Stanley Cup final again. The final game was away, but we went to the game and it was such a fun experience. And I'm very thankful to him to giving that to me.
Yes, that's great. I love that. And that you shared it with like your father. Like, you'll always have that memory. That's fantastic. What is something people always get wrong about you?
I think the obvious one is my age. I always people think that I'm way younger than I am. I was coming back from a work trip in France in 2019 and I was 30. And the woman at customs, she looked at my passport and she said, I was about to ask where your parents were.
That's like, I would take that if I were you. Like,
I'll take it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What is one food you wouldn't want to give up?
Sweets.
Are you a morning or a night person?
Morning.
Favorite holiday?
Probably Christmas.
What job would you absolutely be horrible at doing?
I think anything in sales, because I would be miserable. I don't want to try and convince people to buy something from me.
I know the feeling. What products would you seriously stockpile if you found out they weren't going to sell it anymore? Probably
Kiehl's hand cream.
I don't think I've ever used it.
It's very good. It's like not sticky. It is really moisturizing. You don't necessarily feel it on your skin afterwards. It's like a pretty good price. It lasts for a long time. You just need a little bit.
Maybe you should reach out to them and see if they'll sponsor this episode.
I should.
You are the professional when it comes to sponsorship. So yeah, just saying. What is your favorite app?
My favorite guilty pleasure app is TikTok. My favorite useful app is the New York Times cooking app.
All right. The New York Times, which app?
Cooking. So with the recipe.
Cooking. I think you said cricket. Yeah. I was like, I don't know what it is.
Yes, New York Times cooking app. There's a lot of good recipes and I always will save them and find something to make.
Oh, all right. Good to know. Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram?
Definitely Instagram.
Yeah, same. Who's your biggest inspiration in life?
Probably my grandmother. I would say she's definitely a self-starter. She's a problem solver. Like me, she can be a little bit hard on herself. But She is amazing and a very strong woman, to someone I look up to.
Someone you just traveled with too.
Yes.
All right. As a child, last two questions. As a child, what did you wish to become when you grew up?
When I was really little, I wanted to be a meteorologist.
Oh, okay. I would have not expected that answer.
Yeah, my family lived in Oklahoma for my dad's job for a few years, and there were tornadoes, and I would just sit and watch the Weather Channel like my life depended on it, waiting for tornado watch, tornado warning. They changed the color once of the tornado watcher warning, and I was 3 or something, and my dad wouldn't tell me what the new colors meant. And I said, "You're taking advantage of me because I can't read." Because my parents wanted me to stop watching the Weather Channel all the time.
Oh my God, that's hysterical. I mean, your life kind of did depend on it. Like, I'm just saying.
It did. I mean, one of my parents were watching the Weather Channel. Who was going to be the one to break the news? The internet didn't exist. We didn't have a cell phone for mobile, alerts.
Oh, that's so funny. Finish the sentence. The future of women working in sports is
more access for everyone. I feel like women are really inclusive, and I think that women will take some of the things that they went through that maybe aren't as positive and try and make it easier for the next generation and try and be a resource. So I think that the future of women in sports is going to make it more accessible for everyone.
Love it. Cassie, this was awesome. If people want to get in touch with you, how can they go about doing that?
You can find me on LinkedIn. It is under Cassandra Pisone, so my real first name.
This was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was so much fun. I appreciate it.
So what did you think of this episode? Do you know another woman who works or is aspiring to work in sports? Would you do me a favor and share this with them? It would mean so much if together we could support and inspire other women on their journey. And let's stay connected. I love meeting and talking to new people. Follow me on Instagram at Jahaan Blake and join the free Game of Her Own community by visiting jahaanblake.com. I can't wait to meet you.